Tata's SUV foray in the Indian car market has primarily been based on two of its premier SUVs, the Safari on my right and the Harrier on my left. Now, the Harrier was launched for the first time in 2019, the Safari in 21, but those cars are very different from the cars that you see here because these are the first essentially major updated version of both the SUVs. And to speak to us more on design and a lot more, we're joined by the man of the moment, Martin Ulrich. Martin, thank you for taking the time out and speaking to HT. Martin, first up, what was the thought process behind giving both of these SUVs their design updates? Because clearly these are distinct and yet very Harrier and very Safari respectively.
Yes, I mean, before, both cars essentially had the same design other than the silhouette, the side view. One was a 7-seater, one was a 5-seater. So we said we wanted them to become really their own identities. So we started with the Harrier, and to be honest, the Harrier has been extremely successful. It has its own very strong DNA, SUV character. So we wanted to simply improve the existing recipe. So the design essentially follows the main themes of the previous Harrier, which is almost a dual grille. So you have the humanity line, you have a very strong upper, but also a very strong lower grille. So it was all about making it more modern, obviously bringing the LED lamps, the technology, and making it more perceived quality. So that was very straightforward improvement. And it was all about the character of what the Harrier is. It's very sporty, very dynamic, very capable SUV. Then we started the Safari, and we said, okay, how do we now communicate that it's a very different product? So this is our flagship. You know, not only is it a 7-seater, but it always, from our customer feedback, the demographic, the people who are buying the Safari really see this as almost like a flagship model. It's almost the summit of the portfolio. So when we started to design it, we said we make it very straightforward. The entire front is very upright. You know, it's really very proud, very imposing. And we wanted to create this very imposing front grille. So it has one dominant upper grille. And again, it's all about the detailing. And all of the lines on the Safari are running horizontal and vertical. So everything is very sort of structural, very strong, very sort of has a real presence. Whereas this one, it has a lot of dynamic lines. So there's angles. It's much more sporty and so forth. And here you see them in their sort of signature avatars. So of course, the Safari is an accomplished persona. So you see it with this very, you know, prestigious exterior color. You've got the what we call hot stamping grille. So there's no chrome, but at the same time, it looks very premium. And then of course, with the Harrier, we showed it in this fearless yellow. And it just shows that sort of sportiness, like when you see sports equipment, when you see high-end mountain bikes, when you see sports clothing and sort of all that sort of stuff. It's a reflection of really the customers that are buying it. Of course, these are the flagship avatars, but right. Nevertheless, they really communicate that.
Right. It's very interesting that when you were describing the Harrier, you've mentioned the word sporty quite a few times.
Yes.
Now, looks can be subjective, but the Harrier, to me at least, was a car which was always very masculine, very macho.
Yes, yes.
But now, in its latest form factor, it definitely looks far more sporty. So was that a conscious decision?
Absolutely.
Was it based on some sort of feedback from existing customers?
Yeah, definitely. When we looked at just simply the numbers of, you know, who's purchasing the vehicle, we noticed that there were patterns, you know, between the price points. So there is definitely element that the Harrier, obviously, the customers are much more, I would say, younger or young at heart. You know, so even if they're an older customer, they're very engaged. They're very active. So we saw this as a sort of, you know, active lifestyle, very sporty. But, you know, it doesn't mean just because, you know, you can want to communicate a sportiness, doesn't mean you're actually doing sports. So you've seen now the trend with even clothing that people are wearing, you would almost say sports clothing. It's like sneakers. You know, running shoes used to be only if you went running or you were doing actual sports, but now it's mainstream leisure wear. You could wear it with a suit. So it's the same thing in the sense that it's a sort of cover in terms of, you know, the personality. And the same thing happened with the Safari. We noticed that you know, it was a much more sort of premium customer.
So younger customer base, or at least young at heart for the Harrier,
yes,
and a more premium, a more mature customer base for the Safari. Does that stem only from the fact that that is a 5-seater and this is a a larger vehicle in terms of the number of seats it packs in. So definitely more for the family person.
Yes, I think that's probably where the data was coming from in terms of who's purchasing the vehicles. Obviously, we're showing it in the sort of halo personas. We have the other personas. For instance, Adventure is available, on both, and it you know it depends on who you are from a personality point of view. So ultimately, even if you get the pure persona or the smart persona, they're much more mainstream. So, these are the most extreme versions of that.
Martin, if you can just explain what is persona on both of these vehicles. We've heard of pure, we've heard of
Yes.
words like accomplished.
Yes.
Beyond just the meaning of the words in English, what are you trying to convey through these persona, and what are you offering?
It started out very simply. We used to have a very traditional automotive trim level strategy. So you would have high, medium, low as an example. And to be honest, they were very hierarchical. So you had the high trim, which came with all the features and so forth. And then the low trim was a sort of, price orientated selection. And we always felt like it looked like you were buying the decontented version. And there was this sort of stigma. So we took the personalities and we rotated them so they're not vertical, they're horizontal. And then once you look at it from that vantage point, it really becomes a lifestyle choice. So we said, even if you're buying what traditionally would be a basic model, it's not seen like that. You can basically choose which is your avatar. So for instance, the pure persona, to be honest, I would get the pure persona because I just like
Even though technically pure would be the base?
We don't see it like that because to be honest, you can buy the pure persona, but you would spec it up. So, I would get the pure persona, I would get the largest set of wheels and so forth and, spec it up. But I just like that sort of, much more subtle, discreet, not loud, sort of just, communication of the visuals, interior, exterior. I really like the materials on the interior, the seat fabrics and so forth. So it comes out to each personality. You might be super outgoing and you want to say, look at me, look at, me.
In fact, very interesting you're pointing to that because this particular color is something that we've not really seen on Tata Motors. So if you can also just tell us the story behind this particular shade.
Well, it was simple. I mean, the first thing usually designers do when they start is create an image board. It's a sort of, inspiration, sort of mood board. And when we said, okay, we want to create new Harrier, and like I said, very active lifestyle, very sporty and so forth, we started to notice that there's a lot of, bold colors. Neons are very back, especially when you see it in fashion, when you see in sports. So it could be, a lime yellow, it could be a neon pink, fluorescent, blue and so forth. So these very 80s, very bold, and they're always contrasted with black. And we noticed, whether we were looking at mountain bikes, snowboards, skis, you name it, all of these sort of the products, that they always have a lot of matte carbon offset with, bright accents, really visual. So the simple fact was, one of our designers just visualized the car in a neon color. And it was such a statement that everybody commented on it. And you couldn't unsee it. Once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. And then we said, why not?
Does an SUV body shape make it easier for you to actually go big on colors and experiment a little bit?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Again, this is a personal opinion. I'm not so sure I would be taken with a Tiago in a fluorescent shade or a yellow shade. So does that also help?
I think it does. I mean, the car as a design, when you see it, it definitely communicates, this sort of, I don't know, it has a dynamic feel to it, the Harrier. So I think it was a color that would apply easier than maybe a more mainstream product. If you did that, it would look like maybe, is it really holistically coming together? But here, it's a very good combination because it's not just the yellow on the sheet metal, but it's actually how it contrasts with the blacks. So because you have a lot of cladding on the side, because you have a very graphical front end, I think that actually makes the color work. If you didn't have, these contrasts, I don't think you would have the same impact.
And the color actually translates into the cabin as well, right?
That's right, that's right. So it's much more subtle. To be honest, I would say it's probably about 85–90% black, the interior. So the yellow is actually more of an accent color. You have it on the dashboard with a sort of carbon effect by the passenger. You have it, the armrests on the center console and on the doors are trimmed. And then it's just the stitching, a nice accent color, and of course graphics on the UX UI.
All right. That's actually brilliant. This car though is not in any.
It's very
of these
different.
fancy- Yes, because of the customer base, the target audience. I mean, this color looks really regal.
Yes.
But nothing too fancy, nothing too experimental, nothing too loud. Maybe with the Safari, is that a conscious
that's
decision?
right. No, definitely. This one we wanted to make something that's very sophisticated, like you said. The word regal is very good. Something that's very prestigious. So naturally, we created the hashtag gold as a special edition, part of our new forever. But we said, what if we make that almost like the mainstream? You almost break it into the core of the product. It doesn't become a special edition. Or how do you do that? But this is a much more subtle and nuanced color. It has a lot of sophistication, a lot of flip to it. I could immediately see it in a sort of, nice, in front of a nice hotel and things like that. So you always have this sort of mental image of where the car is and who's using it. The doors being open, somebody's getting out, and so forth. There's a pampering to it.
Right. Martin, colors, the design. In fact, we've touched upon what's on the inside as well. Thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us. Great job with the two cars.
Thank you.
And if you want to know more about the new updated Harrier and the new Safari, do check out our reviews as well. Thank you for watching.